The Port of Belize, a little bit about the Port of Belize. If you have a sofa in your house, if you have a TV in your house, if you have some canned good in your house, chances are you have been affected by what happens at the Port of Belize. The Port of Belize affects each and every Belizean because 9 out of every 10 containers that come into this country come through that port. And while we are excited to hear about the upgrade in the highways, that's important. We're excited to see the upgrades at the PGIA. That's fantastic. And it is even more, with more enthusiasm, we look forward to the potential of rail. Ladies and gentlemen, marine transportation is the most cost-effective mode for international trade. That is very important. So, where are we right now? What is the situation at the Port of Belize? Well, I think it is important to be honest. We are not here to throw absolutely anybody under the bus. But it is well known that the men and women at the Port of Belize do yeoman's work. The men and women at the Port of Belize are trying to move mountains, but they're up against half-a-century-old infrastructure. That infrastructure gives no more. So we're having all the issues that we're having, and it's affecting each and every Belizean. It ends up costing people in their wallets. That is not good. The infrastructure has outlived its design life. Something must be done. All right? Interestingly, we are not alone. We don't live in a bubble. As we speak, and the PM mentioned what's happening in Mexico and their desire to work with us. In the Yucatan, in the Port of Progreso, they are expanding that port. As we speak, containers land at Tomás de Castilla in Guatemala, bound for Benque. Cortés, south of that in Honduras, is competitive. We cannot stand alone in this country. We must fix the situation. So, what is being done? Working with the Office of the Prime Minister, the Project Implementation Unit came up with the Project Implementation Roadmap. What are we looking at? First and foremost, we need to develop a navigation and harbor infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, let me be very clear. We are not digging a new canal. The existing canal will be upgraded and repurposed to bring in larger ships, to bring in more containers, thereby driving down the cost of goods for the Belizean people. What you do is exceedingly important, and we just spoke about it earlier in the conversations that we have been having. How you do it is exceedingly important. So, it will be done via sustainable dredging and mangrove wetland creation. I will get into this a little bit more, a little bit later. But suffice to say, it must be done right, and it will. The improvement of road infrastructure and traffic flow. If you have ever had the misfortune of being stuck during traffic hour, the end of Central American Boulevard, if you've ever tried to navigate through Fabers Road, imagine you being a trucker and trying to come out from there. Imagine if you are a resident in that area. Imagine the horror. The government understands this, and this project will move deliberately to address this issue. So, the improvement of traffic infrastructure, a connection will be made from the Port of Belize directly to the George Price Highway. No need to displace anybody. It goes through Port of Belize lands. And of course, the project shall establish a scalable investment framework, meaning it must be done in such a way that we understand that this is a $400 million investment. Therefore, in stage 1, we must be able to bring in those big ships. In stage 2, we build on it, while at the same time, we lean on international partners, we lean on local investors, we invite people to join us in this endeavor. All in a public-private partnership. The people of Belize, as had been mentioned before, invested a lot of money to acquire the port. We cannot expect to saddle them with even more debt. The PM has made this clear. That is the direction that is being forged. But, so why are we doing this? Real quick, why are we doing this? The creation of jobs, higher paying jobs. Of course, when the project starts, hundreds of jobs will be created at the Port of Belize. We understand that. But going farther, as the economy becomes more muscular, there will be many, many more jobs created. Improvement of connectivity in the region. Belize sits at the tail end of the logistics pipeline. When that pipeline is inefficient, our people pay a higher price. That must be dealt with. Of course, we're looking at reduced consumer costs and mitigated by inflationary pressures on goods arriving by sea. That is what we're talking about. We need to bring in the bigger ships to deal with this situation. And last but not least, the tourism industry in the Caribbean. That magical elixir that's our tourism industry in the Caribbean, spoken about by one of the previous guests. That's going like this in terms of cruise. If we look at the northern Belize, I'm not talking about the Harvest Key area, northern Belize cruise industry, it is going like this. We cannot let that happen. Thousands of Belizeans depend on the cruise tourism industry. Something must be done. So then, a quick recap. The creation of hundreds of jobs, like I said before, I think we're being too humble. Thousands of jobs in the hinterland of this economy. Providing access, the project will provide access to feeder max class cargo vessels that when coupled with quayside infrastructure, better container yards, better and bigger warehousing, and improvement of the road that we mentioned earlier, efficiency gains and the reduction of freight costs per ton by some estimated 31%, and increasing bird productivity of some 52%. That is what we are looking at. That is what the North Star is. The port will also provide a 4-berth shore access for Icon and Excellence class cruise vessels, accommodating 6,000 to 10,000 daily visitors and generating 10,000 to 20,000 guest hours per day. We all know the longer our guests stay on shore, the more our guests spend on shore. The longer our guests stay in Belize, the better position we are in to have them come back to Belize, this time through the upgraded PGIA, and spend even more time in Belize. That is what we're looking at. So, of course, unlocking the potential of Belize's mainland tours, our authentic experience that speakers before me have adequately explained, and the reduction of localized traffic congestion that we discussed, the provision of jobs for a lot of people who depend on this industry, from tour guides to artisans, and the improvement of the standard of living for our people on the south side. So then, we know what we need to do. We know why we need to do it. But equally important is how we do it. That is exceedingly important. This country has a green image. It must be accompanied by a green modus operandi. And that's a part of it. So, the first thing, an expanded and modern infrastructure that is long overdue. We are not digging a new channel. The channel is being improved, dredged, repurposed, so that the large ships can come in, so that we can bring in more cargo per ship, so that we can reduce the cost of living for the people of this country. And of course, so we can bring in the larger ships for the cruise industry and its survival. Another how? Well, we explained that the people of this nation have invested a lot of money to buy the port. We need to find a formula to be able to leverage cruise arrivals to accomplish the project's goals. Like I said before, cruise tourism in the Western Caribbean is robust. We must plug into that. And the project certainly seeks to do that, to make the project bankable. Another how. light and responsible. It is important that the project, and I will go into what specifically we mean in a second, but look out for habitat creation, look out for sustainable use of land, look out for connectivity and ecosystems integration, and look out for a better buffer against the ravages of Mother Nature that unfortunately visit with us from time to time. We need to deal with those. How? Belize's largest urban nature park. Some 400 plus acres of mangroves to be planted. This will absorb between 3,000 to 5,000 metric tons of CO2 per year. Ladies and gentlemen, that is like removing well out over 1,000 cars off the road. Another how? No, we will not just go in there and tell people what must be done. We need to go into the south side and partner with people. We need to partner with our scientific community, with our NGO community, with our people, with our community groups in the south. That must be done. That is a tenet of sustainability. And of course, the idea is to emphasize learning and recreation. So then, the last how. The project shall harness strategic investment, partnerships for shared growth. This is a large project. Belize cannot do this alone. 3 minutes remaining, gotcha. Belize cannot do this alone. We are looking out for partners from far and from near. We can do this when we come together. So, what has been completed? The master plan has been completed. There has been a successful navigation bridge simulation. I'll stick a pin real quick. When we were going through the process of talking to people prior to the start of design, one of the things that was mentioned was a turn by one-man key. Well, the best way to deal with that is once the channel has been designed, you simulate it. So we went to the Star Center in Florida, one of the premier areas to do this in the world, and we brought up people from the port of Belize, including a pilot. We paired them with captains of some of the world's largest cruise ships, and we simulated that channel movement over and over and over. And I'm pleased to say that it passed with flying colors. That will be made known. That will be in the EIA process. So the ESIA terms of reference have been approved. The wetlands creation concept has been designed. And where are we? What are we looking at now? Stakeholder engagement and community outreach. That has happened before. It's happening now. 2 days ago, we met with the NTUCB, and it will continue happening because engagement is exceedingly important. We, of course, hope that to secure financing in the first part of 2026, and by the third quarter of 2026, we are looking at the first jobs materializing and the start of construction. The realization of cargo benefits by the fourth quarter of 2027, and the realization of cruise benefits by 2029. Ladies and gentlemen, what are we looking at? We're looking at a port capable of sustaining economic growth, increasing trade opportunities, underpinning the growth of cruise and nautical tourism, and creating green spaces for our people. This is the vision. We want you to join us in achieving that vision.